Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello again, everybody. This is the Coach Shannon Griffith, and I welcome you to another edition of the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on the Believe Network. Thursday evening, 7:30 kickoff coming up on Saturday afternoon on the Big Ten Network. College game day on campus for a chance for the Hoosiers to keep the streak rolling as they entertain the Washington Huskies in a Big Ten battle this Saturday in Beantown. It's going to be an interesting football game, I think, from my perspective. A lot of different narratives are going on at this point in time. I'm sure everybody saw that supposedly John Gruden is on his way up from Tampa, being that he's a former Tampa or Bloomington kid back in the day. So he's going to be supposedly riding into town as well, along with the College game day staff. But let's do some quick paying the bills, as they say. And again, if you're joining us online on X or YouTube or Facebook, by all means, please feel free to comment. We'll talk about it if you get it up there and I see it and I can get it up on the screen. We can have a conversation. Encourage you to do that. But right now, I'm going to thank our friends over at Bet Online. Basketball fans, it's time of year again. The NBA is back from opening tip-off to buzzer beaters. Bet Online has got you covered for the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all of your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. Bet Online has odds on everything from football, that'd be NFL and college football, Major League Baseball playoffs, the World Series, off and running, I believe, this evening, NHL hockey, as well as political props. Head to the website today to get in on all the Americans' most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. I also want to thank those affiliates of the Hoosier Football Tailgate for their sponsorships and affiliates with us as well. You can find those on our Linktree page that comes on the bio pages of X or Facebook or Instagram, as well as our website, HoosierTailgate.com. And if you go to one of those affiliates and you would happen to purchase something, we do receive a little bit of a commission. And if you go ahead and do that, I thank you well in advance for doing that, because there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. Now, here we go. We've got some things we've got to get updated as well. This evening is Curtis Rourke injured his finger on Saturday against Nebraska, and I saw the play, kind of resaw it on a couple of replays. It's what I thought he did. He hit that finger flush, thumb, and it just split that fingernail. How mad it was, I'm not, at liberty to even think that I can give you a good definition of what all happened in the medical jargon world, but it hurts. But from what I understand in his surgery, and the reason why it was promising, one, it went well. They got all the area that they needed to clean out and make sure that the nail bed is ready to receive the next nail that would come into that place about 2 months from now. They said that's about all it takes. And of course, he's going to have some issues with that. He'll get used to, and that's why there is so much promise for him coming back on next week, as early as next week. So some promising things there, but again, I don't want to get the cart before the horse, so to speak, on that, because we still don't know all the ins and outs of his injury and what all it entails. From the nail standpoint, it's still a very tender area. It's also going to be an area that has a lot of nerve endings. So it's going to be one of those things that we'll have to kind of wait and see on with everything as it goes from there. The other thing we learned this week was EJ Williams has left the team. I know there was a post on Twitter about his departure and had to do with something with a injury that he was going to attend to and have surgery on. And supposedly Coach Signetti basically said not now and just kind of gave him the exit door. Now, I'm sure there's every side to this another side to this story and how this may or may not have played out. I don't think he's going to address it because in his mind, it's not anything that he needs to address from that standpoint. But again, I'd caution anyone that wants to jump to the conclusions that he's hurting a player for the reasons of not allowing him to get surgery or however that goes. But, there's a reason AJ went his way because he felt that was what best for him, and he's no longer there. And hey, I hate to see it because he's a talented kid, as was Donovan McCulley. But at the end of the day, they've got 6 other bodies out there playing that are just as talented players. So, it's kind of is what it is there. Remember, Saturday is a red-out game for the Washington game in Memorial Stadium. All games now, the home game slate at Indiana are all sold out. So that's a pretty good thing to hear at this point in time, that every game from here on out at home is sold out. This game will be a red out, which I think will be a unique thing to see if it can be all accomplished. And I think it's going to be a rocking place come Saturday afternoon at 12 kickoff on BTN. So red out on Saturday, as I already alluded to. The games are all sold out as of now at home. And it's one of those things, like I said, from the perspective of the kids, the players that work so hard each and every week, the coaches, to be given the opportunity to play in front of a sold-out Memorial Stadium. It plays a big factor. It played a big factor on Saturday's game against Nebraska. And I think it was pretty evident. They took the opening kickoff, went down the field and scored after they went for it on 4th down. And I think a lot of that's attributed because of the way the crowd reacted in the game and what it gives those kids and coaches in terms of a supportive cast around them. So the more that we can pack in there, the merrier. And I think that's one of the big things that maybe gets lost sometimes, especially at Indiana, on how a crowd that can be a sold out crowd can have an impact on a game, whether it's through loudness and cheering and things of that magnitude. But when you're in a stadium like Memorial, and because it's not a overly open place, that sound just stays on top of you. And so it can make it pretty difficult to hear from that standpoint. The loudest stadium I ever coached in was Florida. And it was crazy how loud it was that day. With Spurrier's team, when I think Rex Grossman was actually playing that year. And when I was at Ball State, we played them down there. Actually played them tough. I think we lost by 7 or 8, if I can remember right. I don't know. It's been a while. But what I do remember is how loud it was on the field for that game. It was so loud that even with headsets on, you could not hear the guys in the box very well. So that's the type of difference that a crowd in Memorial Stadium can make in a game of this magnitude on Saturday. And add to it the red out and things of that nature. We're trying to make it as much as an intimidating atmosphere for the runners-up in the national championship game a year ago against Michigan. So all things are on the table as it pertains to aggravating the Huskies. Lastly, then at the end here, we'll get into the scouting report, talk a little bit about this Husky football team coached by Jed Fish. You've got Brennan Carroll, the offensive line coach, co-coordinator. Jed Fish calls the plays, has done that at every place he's been, and he's quite good at it. And then, of course, Belichick's boys, the defensive coordinator for Washington, and you'll see some similarities in defensive statistics as we look at them here in a second. But it's a game that Indiana is right now a 6.5 point favorite. I think the over under is like 53.5, if memory serves me correct. But it's going to be one of those things that is going to take Yeoman's effort to get another W at home against Washington. As we said earlier, Indiana is up to number 13, Penn State's 3, and then, of course, Oregon's number 1 in the country at this point. I'm a little surprised that Indiana is not in the top 10. I'm not quite sure that everybody truly believes, or if that may have been a result of Curtis's injury keeping them from that. But again, those things also work themselves out as you go on, because nothing really matters until you get to the end of the season to see how everything goes. And I'm not even sure how they're going to do any type of tiebreakers that comes to fruition, and I guarantee it's going to happen. It's just one of those things that, with everything that's been thrown together as quickly as the Big Ten Super Conference and the SEC and all the teams that are involved in these kind of mega conferences right now, there's not a true and try method that they're utilizing for tiebreakers, and I'm not just quite sure how all that is going to work as of right now. But we're closing in on the end of the season here. We're 5 weeks out from that being the case. And we're going to find out a lot here over the next 2 to 3 weeks on how everybody shakes out in this Big Ten race as we go forward. And Indiana, again, they're undefeated in the Big Ten, which leaves them tied with Oregon for sure. And I do believe Penn State is still undefeated in Big Ten play, but I have to look at that. So those 3 teams are right there. Ohio State has 1 loss. Of course, that is to Oregon. So there's a head-to-head matchup that will never change as it pertains to Oregon. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic as we get down here the last few games, and we'll see how it all shapes out. I know that, there's a lot of things that have been talked about this week. Nebraska fans crying about how bad Nebraska is and such forth. And I just kind of thought about that for a second. It isn't that Nebraska is bad. That's just how good Indiana is. Take it or leave it. I don't think Nebraska is a bad football team. And I do think they still have a really good defense. They just happen to run into a team that right now everything was going right for them. And we're going to find out Saturday where Taven Jackson is in his development. I personally believe he will do things at a high level. And I do think that there will be no padding around him in terms of what they may or may not do as an offense on Saturday. I think all things are on the table. Talked on Jim Coyle's show this morning on Indiana Sports Beat Radio that as a coach, as a former quarterback coach, the one thing that mostly concerns me, just even if it's one game, is the fact that after Taven, it's 2 true freshmen that you go to. And those kids, in some respects, are not even close to being ready to step on the field in a Big Ten environment if they need to. But, I'm not quite sure who that 3rd pick would be. I guess it would be Tyler Cherry, based upon the fact that he was here through all spring and things of that nature. But I don't think they're going to let that be known as well. So Indiana does not put out it too deep. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's just a standard operating procedure by the sports information department, that they're just not going to put out a too deep. They haven't done it for quite a few years, so I'm not quite sure if it's a inward decision in their sports information office or if that's a coaching decision. So I just find it odd that they don't put out it too deep. I'm not sure they're hiding anything else, that now we're in week 9 of the season, and I just don't see that being a factor in that regard. Well, let's get enough talking going down here, and let's start talking about some of these stats that we've got coming into this week. First of all, let's look at the Big Ten schedule as we know it right now. You know, the Rutgers in USC game, and that's on Friday night for USC, that they're flying back to the East Coast. And I tell you, it's really interesting in some regards. I don't think that will be as bad for USC, but when you look at Indiana and Washington, that game with a noon kickoff, theoretically, that's a 9 a.m. kickoff for Washington. And some of these West Coast teams that have been playing in those early games, it hasn't been very good for them. And, you know, there's something to be said about that. And I'm sure it's something that they're going to have to work out on when you look forward on the schedule aspect of it. But some of the schedule's out of the hands of even the conference because of the TV deals and such. Indiana kicks off at noon, Big Ten Network. Nebraska comes back to the Midwest and plays Ohio State, and that's a 25.5-point spread for Ohio State. I'm not sure if it may have moved up, but not sure there. And then, of course, Northwestern, Iowa, that will be a good contest. We'll see where Iowa figures in all this. You know, Iowa, I believe, was the last game Washington played because they had a bye last week. And Iowa beat them pretty soundly, 40-17. And then you got Northwestern. When you look at common opponents, Washington beat them pretty soundly, 24-5. But Northwestern has a tendency to play Iowa pretty tough. I still think that's going to be a good ball game, as is Maryland and Minnesota. And then, of course, the big one there is Illinois at Oregon. That will be an interesting dynamic. Can Illinois pull off the major upset, or in some respects keep a game close where it's a 4-quarter ball game, or is Oregon going to run away with it? That will be an interesting. If you have a thought on that game from the Illinois-Oregon game, please throw it up in the comments section. Kind of get some of your guys' take on that one. Michigan State, the big rivalry game. Michigan's reeling. Michigan State is, you know, finding themselves as a program. They've got a young quarterback that is pretty dynamic. And that one should be interesting. I'm not even sure Michigan knows who they got starting for them at quarterback. Because of the offense has just not been anywhere close to what Michigan is accustomed to having. And then, of course, that last game there, Penn State and Wisconsin. That one's in at Wisconsin, and that's a game to me that really could be a dandy of a ball game, and it has a lot to say on the race for in terms of, you know, first place, second place, and things of that nature. But that ball game, it'll be an interesting game to see up there in Wisconsin. And Penn State's riding high. Wisconsin's kind of rebounded and found themselves as a football team. I think they can be one of those teams that could be dangerous, especially down the stretch. But that will be an interesting ball game from that perspective on Saturday night. But go back here to the stats that we were looking at there. All right, let's look at some statistical stuff here when it comes to this ball game on Saturday. This is the tail of the tape This is a offensive perspective now with points per game on both teams. So this is all offenses. This is offense versus offense. And you can see Indiana has quite a big lead against them in terms of points per game. When you look at the rushing game, again, Indiana has a pretty good lead there, about 44 yards. Passing game, relatively similar, about a 47-yard differential in total yards. The big things to me is third downs. Indiana is much more efficient on third downs than what Washington has been, but they are also a team that will go for it like Coach Signetti does on fourth down, and they've had a 58% success rate on fourth down. So they're a team, again, that's not afraid to go for fourth downs even in their own territory. So that, again, looking at this game, defense, may have to play that fourth down on quite a bit on Saturday against a Washington team. When you look at turnovers, Indiana's got 2 fumbles, Washington's 3, and let's see, they're both at 5, I believe, total wise on the year. The big thing there too, points off of turnovers. Indiana with 49 points off of turnovers. That is phenomenal. Crazy. Then you can see the differential there that Washington's only garnered 17 points off of turnovers the defense has gotten, but Indiana has done a phenomenal job because the flip side of that is Indiana's defense has not given up a point off of any turnover to date. So, again, another key component of this game. Red zone touchdowns, that there is the tail of the tape from Washington's perspective. Indiana, 84% are scoring in the red zone, and Washington is 50%. You can see there's a huge differential there. Some 34 points, so that's a big differential. The biggest problem for Washington when it comes to the red zone is they have really struggled in the kicking game with their kicker, who's started the year as a pretty talented kid, but he has gone from being somebody reliable to games where he's cost them points in the red zone, and that could be a big factor on Saturday as well. So offensively, you can see there that the two offenses are similar to in some respects, but really different in others. When you look at the statistical aspect of things there for Saturday, then you look at the defensive side of the ball, and this is where you see some similarities in this. There's something I missed up there. I think that's supposed to be force. Well, I'll have to look at that because that can't be right on Washington's statistical stuff. And let me see if I can find and get the correct one up there. But I don't think that is correct on the total yardage for them per year right now. Let's see if I can find that statistical stuff. All right, let's see here. Yeah, it says they are giving up 266 yards, 143 on the ground. That's where it's different. It's not 266 in the air. That should be a 1. Sometimes I make typographical errors, as you can see. That's 143.3, which gets them to that number of yards per game. Put it in the wrong place. Oh, you idiot. Total yards, 266.3. Passing yards. Passing yards. 123 is what that's supposed to be. Well, now this thing's not 123. There we go. And then rushing yards, 143.3. So there you go. I apologize on that with everything. Let's get everything back to, there you go. Sorry about that, but there you go with the number of yards per game. With that statistic there, because there's a lot of similarities there as their defense goes with Indiana. It's an interesting team because they are totally different on the road as opposed to home. And, I don't know if that's because of the travel, what that is. I know that's something that Jed Fish has addressed in this off week pretty religiously. And I would imagine he's done a lot of morning practices at the time of the game. So, making sure practice is starting at 9:00 and the guys are getting up at a time that is more reflective on what the, time of game will be for them. So, fourth down percentages, they've given up about 54% of those. That's not a good stat for them as a defense, where Indiana's only given up 21%. And then you can see there the big differentials in turnovers. They've only forced 6 turnovers. Indiana thus far has garnered 12. And Indiana's giving no points off of turnovers, and Washington has given up 14 off of their turnovers that they've had to defend. And then the red zone is a little bit advantage Washington there. I think they're a little stingier there in that area of the field. They're a defense that, with Belichick, likes to do a lot of movement. They get in a lot of different things, and they're trying to confuse you in your blocking schemes at sometimes. But they're not a bad defense by any stretch of the imagination. And Indiana's going to have their hands full against the Washington defense because they are a stingy defense. So it's going to be important. Field position will be a big part of this game Saturday, especially if there's a lot of wind that Indiana and Washington may be up against. And the team that can have the shortest field to drive a offensive series will have a huge advantage. Indiana last week was pretty good driving the field. I think they had 3 drives that were 75 plus yards or more, which for most teams is not something that most of offensive teams can do with any consistency. When a defense has to defend a long field, the odds are always in their favor. When a defense has to defend a short field, then the offense tendencies give out to that and more of in their favor when a defense has to defend a short field, whatever that is, through a turnover, or could be a kick that is return, or a block kick, or whatever that case may be. But when a defense has to defend a short field, that's when they run into problems. Now, Indiana's defense, when they've had to defend a long field, has been very good. When they've let teams get down to the field and get inside the 20, things aren't so good there because they've allowed teams to score some points in there. But the thing is, they still don't have more than like 15 or 16 opportunities in the red zone for an opponent's team. So they've done quite well of not allowing them down there too much. And of course, they haven't given up, too many points anyway. So they've done really well on some of these things. So in that regard, it's been pretty good. Back into the statistical stuff here. Let's see here. Let's go into Let's see. I think I've got the too deep up here. Get that off of there. Whoops. I didn't want that one. Let's go with this one. They're too deep for Iowa. This is against their last game against Iowa Hawkeyes. Offensive line wise, they've been a group that's been banged up here and there. I do believe they're going to be pretty healthy against Indiana. Their center and right guard are two big fellows that can, has been a big leader, but, they're pretty big across that front. You got 6'7", 6'4", 6'2", 6'4", 6'8". Redshirt freshman, 6'8", man. That's crazy. And then, so they're a pretty big offensive line when you set them down to look at them. Quentin Moore, the tight end, is 6'4", decent blocking tight end. They do use him in the passing game as well. Will Rogers is the quarterback. He's the one that transferred from Mississippi State. He has been very good. I think he's like fourth in total yards thrown or something to that effect. He's a very talented quarterback. Throws a nice deep ball. And then Coleman, the running back, he is a bulldozer. Indiana is going to have to tackle well against him because that kid can run you over or run through you very easy. He's very powerful. And the Davis kid that's behind him is also a pretty good football player. Boston, Jackson, and Hunter on the outside, the two big guys that are 6'2" and 6'4". Boston and Hunter, those two cats can play some ball, and they do a lot of things to get them one-on-one isolated. Jed Fish likes to use formational situation stuff to get his matchups, and he'll probably do a lot of that on Saturday. So you'll see movements, you'll see different shifts and things of that nature that he's trying to get the particular matchup that he wants to get. Defensive side of the ball, you can see how they align there. They're more of a 3-4-ish in that regard. Bandays and Valdez, those are the two big cats on the inside. And then Dufree and Ward are the two big edge rushing type outside. Their defensive line, they've kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde this year. Again, against Northwestern, they physically dominated Northwestern at the point of attack. Iowa physically dominated them at the point of attack. So it's a little bit odd in that regard. Outside, it's a pretty good senior, junior, latent football team. Not all of these guys were playing a year ago because of where they were at as part of the national picture, the national playoffs and such. But, again, when they went into the season this year, they had when the Big Ten media days were occurring, or when they did their annual two-a-day stops for the Big Ten network, Coach Fish was going to rely heavily on the defense because that was where their experience was. That is where they could challenge some teams with what they do in order to, create turnovers or field position for the offense. So I know he went into the year feeling that the defense gave them a chance to win. And I would say for the better part of the year, that's true. But it's night and day from when they play at home versus where they play on the road. So that is some of the things there that'll be interesting, of the jockeying around of some of this stuff on Saturday that comes into the picture as it pertains to how they may or may not do against Indiana's offense. And again, I say this about Taven Jackson. I said it on Saturday on the post-game show with Jim Coyle on the Indiana Sports Beat Radio Network, and then I said it again on Monday. I was thrilled to death the way Taven Jackson came in and played Saturday, and how he came in and took command, and the team rallied behind him. And I do think he's going to walk out in that first series and have a lot of confidence, not only in himself, but the guys around him are going to have confidence in him. He is a talented kid. He has utmost potential, arm wise and things of that magnitude. It's just a matter, can he get himself in a position where he's as effective as Curtis has been these first 7 weeks of the season? Now, is he going to be Curtis Rourke on Saturday? No. He's his own individual, and there are some things that Taven has in his toolkit that maybe Curtis doesn't have in his. So there are some things there that Indiana may try to do with him, and that's the one thing that's probably with Washington and in their preparation. They spent the last 2 weeks thinking, or the last 7 days prior to the first of this week, thinking that Curtis Rourke was going to be the guy, and all of a sudden now they've got to go back and reevaluate what does Taven Jackson bring to the table. And I'm sure they've evaluated film from a year ago on him just to see what, all is potentially involved with him playing in a game like this. So I don't think Sig is going to, like I said, put training wheels on him. I think they're going to do what he does best and put him in the best possible position to have success. And I think he has a ton of confidence in the kid. And like I said, I think the biggest thing with Taven is that, in spring from last year and into fall this year, it was a transformation in a lot of ways for him that was on the good side of the coin. But it still comes down to preparing yourself as a starting quarterback. And I think that's one of the things that Sig always related to, is that he wasn't up to par that he thought he needed to be as it came to preparation. Having Curtis there gave him vision and visual proof of what it takes to be the top guy. So I do think he's going to trot out there on Saturday with a lot of confidence, and I think that's going to be a game that Indiana will do what they've normally done. So let's look at some of the things here with this Washington team. As you can see, their defensive front there, they do squat a little awkwardly, I think. But this is a touchdown that you're going to see. Watch the blocking up front of Iowa. Good job of getting that push at the point of attack. Look what 77 does. He's the right guard, and they just escort them out of the way. I mean, there's a huge hole in there, and they've got a free backer, and he just loses himself. I mean, 26 should be making that play for a 3-yard loss. So you can see how he's a little bit behind the aspect of the play. So here's another play. Again, Iowa blows them off the football here. This is very well. This is outside zone in theory. They're tossing it now. But they do a great job of running their feet and getting going. And there you go. I mean, that running back for Iowa is pretty amazing kid as a running back. He's somebody that I think is done a great job this year for Iowa. But you can see, again, look at these blocks. They are just blowing their ass off the line of scrimmage. Look at they're in what I call the bear front, or what Chicago Bears would call the bear 46. So both guards are covered and the center's covered in this situation. So they're full zone in this thing, but they take the nose and the tackle and they run them 5 to 10 yards down the field. And Iowa just exploits that, and big play. As you can see there with that particular play. Whoops. This will give you let's see. Yeah, I didn't have the end zone of that one. Again, here's another thing. With their run game, look at this again. I mean, they're bringing some pressure off the edge, a double edge pressure type of thing here. You got this, you got that, and they're going to a man-free concept in behind it. And Iowa just runs inside zone, and they rip him. Again, all zone blocking schemes for Iowa in this game for the most part. Aloha, Greg. Let's see what we got here. Let's see if I can do a better deal there with his text color. Let's see if I can do this and make it better so we can read it. Aloha from Hawaii County Paradise. Well, it must be nice to be out in paradise. That would be a nice thing to get out there on the coast in that regard. So thanks for joining us here this evening. And I'm sure you're enjoying the weather out on the coast. But again, like I said, Iowa did a great job with the running the game. This is the Michigan game, and you'll see what I mean by the pure differential of the two in some respects. This is going to give you a look at what Michigan was able to do again on the inside zone play. They ripped this one pretty good. Now, they were already down 14 here, and this was the time that Tuttle came in the game and led them on a drive. So they come out and run inside zone, but you can see they're bringing that stunt again with 2 off the edge, and Edwards makes him pay for it, and it's a touchdown. Again, in the red zone, they get themselves out of whack again here in this semi-bear front. And they're bringing the edge guy, and he comes in, but he's got to be the guy that's containment. I mean, he should be forcing this thing inside, and what happens is he runs himself outside, and Edwards gets a huge play out of it because he's not in his position. So from that standpoint, and then Northwestern here, as you can see, Lausch did the same thing to Indiana because he was a mobile quarterback and was able to get out and make some plays. This is where Taven is a little bit different in that regard. Whoops, sorry about that. He has the ability to get out in space and make a play. They're bringing a guy on a hot. He finds the open receiver. It turns into a pretty good chunk play on that play. Back to Iowa again. Inside zone down here on the end zone. Good job by them. And it's just taking candy from a baby in some respects. When Iowa played them again, I think they're two different teams. This is their offense. This is the tailback. He is really good, as you can see there. He's not afraid of contact. He initiates it, and he initiates it here on this first down play against Iowa. Pure cutback, and that's a pretty darn good cut that he makes here because they're running the inside zone, and he sees him over penetrating and cuts it all the way back, makes one guy miss in space. Quarterback's out there throwing a block, and he has a great run. Now, this is a Rodgers throw. He can make throws like this. He's very good when he needs to be with touch. He does that pretty well as anybody, putting the ball in the end zone. Surfwater, Canona. I'm not a surfer there, my man. This is one of his few interceptions he's given up, and this DB does a great job. He just kind of undercuts the route, and he kind of threw a ball that he really shouldn't. He doesn't really make those mistakes. Now, they also have another quarterback, number 2, that will come in at times, and they'll do more quarterback runs with him. Here he is right here, number 2. Now, he hands this one off, and this was their answer. They're running kind of a pure outside zone with the gap scheme. And again, look at Coleman. He is a load, and he runs the football very well. Michigan, again, he was able to run them through tackles and such that Indiana's just really going to have to wrap this kid up. They're going to have to make sure they got plenty of bodies at the at the point of attack. Now, this is crazy here because if you watch the interior of this backer blitzing, if I can stop it, watch the right guard here get blown up by this backer. He just crushes him. But here's another throw. This is a great throw. He splits the defenders on a post route, gets a big chunk play. And that's one thing that they did against Michigan. Rather creatively. Here's their Jed Fish and his creativity. Double swing back screen. And there's nobody there. So Jed Fish is, like I said, a good offensive-minded coach with a creativity about him as well. Here's another throw by Hurd. If he's got a pocket, this is a pretty good protection by Washington here. He's got that bull that we talked about. He steps up into it. He unleashes it and splits two of the Northwestern defenders for a big play touchdown in that game against Northwestern. And again, here's Coleman again ripping off a big run, as you can see. The kid's a star in terms of what he can do. So Indiana's going to have to be mindful of tackling, number one, and getting great penetration on every down and pressure on the quarterback as much as humanly possible. They're going to get challenged one-on-one with those wide receivers on the outside because they're good size and we don't have great size at corner. So it's going to be one of those things, the more pressure they can put on Rodgers, I believe, will be important, because if he's got time to step up in the pocket and throw it, he's got really good touch and he can make those throws. Here's their kicking game. This has been something that's been raveling apart here over the last few weeks at Washington. This kicker was supposed to be really good. He gets this one blocked. That's the one thing, is that they're getting blocks on him because he's not getting the ball elevated enough on his kicks. So you talk about taking away a team's momentum. After the offense makes a big drive down the field, the kicker goes out and either misses it or gets it blocked. It's deflating. And that's led to them only having a 24-point average on the year. Here's their punt team. Nothing there that other than it's an opportunity to run the ball and get great field position. And Iowa was able to do that on that particular punt. And here's a block or a miss at Michigan. He misses it wide left from about 41, 42 yards out, something that he's well within his range, and he just hooks it. And then this is right before the half with them went up 14-10. And just think about the mentality here. They kicked the field goal. It's now 17-10 for Washington. But I believe, yeah, he misses this one because it gets blocked again partially. So again, it's very deflating for a team to, excuse me, to have these drives as Washington has had throughout the year where their field goal kickers not come through for them, and it's a deflating matter. And that's led to them only scoring about 24 points a game. And, I think that'll be an interesting thing to see if Gross is still their kicker this week, after a week where they probably had some competition, to see who was going to be the kicker. Because there's not so much you can do when you're right in the thick of it. But when you've got a bye week, it's a great time to do some competitive situations, especially at kicker, when you're not getting the productivity that you think you can get. So he may not even be kicking come Saturday, other than, kickoff or something of that nature. But it's been a problem for them as a team that they haven't done great in that arena with their kicker and such. So one thing is looking here now at some of what I think is important for this ball game for the Hoosiers to win a game. What I think is key to this ball game, they've got to get Taven involved early. That means they've got to get him in the thick of it from the get-go, and I don't think that's going to be a problem or an issue. The RPO game has been something that they've done religiously each and every week, and that's another way to get Taven into the ball game is get right into their thick of their offense in that regard. I do think they're going to have to rush the football with effectiveness this week. They've got to get 200 plus yards and hold Washington under 100 yards. They've got to tackle that Coleman back and Davis really well because they will break tackles and they're really good with yards after contact. I think Coleman's like third in the league at yards after contact, if I'm not mistaken. But again, Indiana, good solid rushing attack. Basically what they've been doing and averaging, it's got to continue. And then the defense has got to hold Washington down. It's got to be a game where Indy throws for about 275 and holds Washington to about 200 or less. How is that going to be accomplished? Taven with the RPOs, and then when they have to throw it, making good decisions with the football. If it's not there, punting is not a bad thing, or if it's early down, lining up 2nd and 10 is not a bad thing to have when you're throwing the football. So 275 there, and then defense finding ways to get pressure on Rodgers every particular way they can, and don't give him a pocket to throw in, because when he has time to throw the football, he will pick you apart. Indiana's got to put 30 up. I know they're averaging 48. I'm just saying they've got to score at least 30 or more points and hold Washington to 17 or less. So 7 under their average. I think that's important for this game. They have to win the turnover battle. I think Indiana's +7 right now on the year, and Washington's a +3. That was a key factor last week for Indiana, as they were a +5 against Nebraska. And anytime you can create 5 turnovers in a game, your chances of winning goes up exponentially after 2. So getting 5, you can see why it was a blowout. So against Washington, finding ways to gain possessions, taking the ball away, interceptions, fumbles, things of that magnitude. Special teams, I like to see them score or set up a score with special teams. So whether that's with kickoff return, getting a great return, or a punt return, getting a great return, or blocking a field goal attempt and picking it up and score, however that occurs, for them to score or set up a score, I think will be a great way to keep Washington at bay. And there's a lot of speculation, and I've heard it today from Brock Heward on his radio show out in Washington. He thinks Indiana is ripe for a upset against a team like Washington, just because of they are the darlings of the Midwest. Signetti and, College Game Day, after Big Ten, after the Big Noon kickoff crowd was here, now College Game Day's coming. Things are riding high in Bloomington. Everybody's telling them how good they are. And here comes lonely Washington into town, 6.5 point underdog. And he thinks that's ripe for them to get beat. Well, I don't think Sig's going to allow them to get too full of themselves, because he has a way of bringing them right back to reality. I'm positive of that. But, Washington, like I said, and Jed Fish are good offensive football teams. So it's not like they're not capable of it, even though their record may not reflect that at this point in time. So there's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of, bandwagon jumpers at this point in time, including in the media. Everybody wants the story. They want Sig, or they want this. And at the same time, they're saying how they're going to get beat because they don't have work. Well, I got news for you. We got a kid in the name of Taven Jackson that can do just as good. And I can guarantee you these kids have rallied around him. And it was evident on Saturday, because if he didn't do what he did Saturday, there wouldn't be this, ground swelling of support for him. There's no question in my mind that the kid is capable. And I think he brings another element to the table that adds to the Indiana offensive dynamics that maybe there hasn't been with Taven or Curtis at this point. So everything in that regard is, all the statistical analysis, things of that look good for Indiana. It's, again, about the white lines and going out there and playing the way they can. So I thank you guys for joining me here again on the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on the Believe Network. Remember to catch me Monday. We'll recap this ball game on Monday after the Cignetti's presser, and I will be on with Jim Coyle on Indiana Sports Beat Radio's post-game show about 30, 40 minutes or so on after the game, after he's done getting all the interviews. I'll be with him to give a brief recap and thoughts on what did or did not happen in the game and how that did or did not impact Indiana's day. But I think we're going to have a happy day, and I do think Indiana gets another win and moves down the road to their next opponent on the schedule. But thanks for joining me again here tonight. Be safe traveling down to Bloomington if you can. Bring your red, as we're in a red out for Memorial Stadium, a sellout Memorial Stadium that brings in the Washington Huskies off the West Coast and Jed Fish to town. Well, I thank you again for joining me here this evening as well. And be safe as you travel down to Bloomington. If you can't make it, we'll all be there watching in our faith from the televisions wherever you may be, even in Hawaii, if that's the case. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on Believe.